You already know the relationship is destroying you. You've said it out loud. You've heard it from friends. You've even Googled it at 2 a.m., reading the exact words that describe exactly what's happening to you, and you still went back. That's not weakness, that's not stupidity, and it is definitely not love. What's happening inside your brain right now is something that neuroscientists have only recently been able to explain. And when you understand it, everything changes. Because the reason you can't leave has nothing to do with your character, it has everything to do with your chemistry. Your brain has been hijacked, and today we're going to show you exactly how it was done. Think back to the beginning of that relationship, the one that came to mind just now. There was a moment, probably early on, where everything felt electric, like this person saw you in a way no one ever had. They were attentive, intense, almost too good. You felt chosen. And then something shifted. It became unpredictable. One day warmth, the next coldness, affection followed by withdrawal, kindness followed by cruelty. And the worse it got, the more you needed the good moments, the more you chased them. You've experienced this pattern without knowing it had a name, without knowing it had a mechanism, without knowing that right now, in a laboratory, neuroscientists can look at a brain scan of someone in your exact situation, and it looks identical to the brain scan of a cocaine addict mid-craving. That is not a metaphor. That is a clinical finding from peer-reviewed neuroscience. So what is actually happening inside your skull, and why does your brain keep pulling you back toward the very person causing you pain? The answer starts with a psychologist named B.F. Skinner and a lever. In the 1950s, B.F. Skinner ran an experiment that would quietly become one of the most important discoveries in the history of behavioral science. He put rats in a box with a lever. Some rats got a food pellet every single time they pressed the lever. Predictable, reliable. Those rats pressed it, got their reward, and moved on. But the second group had a lever that only gave food sometimes, randomly, no pattern, no warning. Sometimes pressing it gave nothing, sometimes it gave a reward. The rats in that second group became obsessed. They pressed it compulsively, frantically, far more than the rats who got a guaranteed reward every time. Here is the key finding. Unpredictable rewards create stronger compulsion than consistent ones. Skinner called this intermittent reinforcement. And what it revealed is that the human brain, just like those rats, is wired to become addicted to inconsistency. When you cannot predict whether a reward is coming, your brain does not give up. It escalates, it fixates, it keeps pressing the lever. Now replace the lever with a person. Replace the food pellet with affection, warmth, and validation, and suddenly the most confusing relationship of your life starts to make neurological sense. But it goes deeper than behavior, because intermittent reinforcement doesn't just change what you do, it physically changes your brain chemistry. Here is what happens on a neurological level every time that person is kind to you after a period of coldness or cruelty. Your brain releases dopamine. Dopamine is the chemical of anticipation, of wanting, of pursuit. It is not the chemical of happiness, it's the chemical of "I need more of that." And critically, dopamine is released in far greater quantities when a reward is unexpected. The same way a slot machine triggers a bigger dopamine spike than a predictable paycheck, the unpredictable kindness of a toxic person floods your reward system harder than the consistent affection of a healthy one. Your brain, in plain terms, is getting a bigger hit from chaos than it would from stability. But dopamine is only part of the story.
At the same time, your body releases cortisol during the painful episodes, the arguments, the coldness, the moments of cruelty. Cortisol is your stress hormone. It puts your entire nervous system on high alert. Your heart pounds, your thoughts race, your body is in a state of survival. And then the kind moment comes, the apology, the warmth, the version of them you fell in love with. And the cortisol drops, the relief floods in, and your brain does something remarkable. It attaches that relief directly to the person who caused your distress. The very source of your pain becomes neurologically wired as the solution to your pain. This is the trap, and once it's set, it is almost impossible to think your way out of it. In 1981, psychologists Donald Dutton and Susan Painter began studying exactly this. They wanted to understand why abuse victims maintained such powerful emotional attachments to the people hurting them. What they found was this: trauma bonds form under two specific conditions, a power imbalance and intermittent cycles of abuse and reward. Their 1993 study confirmed that the intermittency of abuse was itself one of the strongest predictors of how deeply bonded someone became, not the severity of it, but the unpredictability. In other words, the hot and cold behavior was not a side effect of the toxic relationship. In many cases, it was the mechanism of control. Now here is where the science gets truly unsettling. In 2010, anthropologist Helen Fisher and her team at Rutgers University put 15 people inside an fMRI brain scanner. Each of these people had recently been rejected by a romantic partner. Every single one reported still being intensely in love with the person who had left them, still thinking about them for the majority of every waking hour, still desperate for them to come back. Fisher showed them each a photograph of their ex-partner while the scanner recorded their brain activity in real time. What the scans showed stopped researchers cold. The brain regions that lit up, the ventral tegmental area, the nucleus accumbens, the orbitofrontal cortex, were the exact same regions that activate in cocaine addicts experiencing a craving. Not similar, not comparable, the same. Fisher's co-researcher, Dr. Arthur Aaron, stated directly, what is unique to romantic rejection includes elements that are very much like craving for cocaine. And the scans revealed something else that was almost harder to accept. The longer these people spent obsessing, the more their craving response intensified, not weakened. The brain was not moving toward healing, it was escalating toward addiction. This is why you could know with complete intellectual certainty that a relationship is damaging you and still feel physically incapable of walking away. Because you are not fighting a bad habit, you are fighting a neurological addiction that has been wired into the deepest, most primitive parts of your brain. The same regions that keep you alive, the same regions that make you seek food when you're starving. Your brain has categorized this person as a survival need. But here is the question that should stop you cold right now. If your brain can be conditioned into this state, who does the conditioning, and is it ever done on purpose? Here is what this actually looks like in everyday life, not in a lab, in real people's real experiences. The first pattern is what researchers call the love bombing cycle. The relationship begins with overwhelming intensity, constant contact, enormous affection, the feeling that this person thinks you are the most remarkable human they have ever encountered. Your dopamine system is running at full capacity. You are, neurologically speaking, high. Then something changes. The attention is withdrawn. You find yourself working harder and harder to get back to where you were. But you can't, because the warmth now only comes back unpredictably, in bursts, after conflict, after you've almost given up. Every time it returns, you feel a relief so powerful it gets coded in your brain as proof that this connection is irreplaceable. The second pattern shows up in relationships that are not obviously abusive but are emotionally chaotic. A partner who is loving when things go well but punishing when stressed, who gives warmth one week and cold silence the next, who says things that wound and then acts like it never happened. You find yourself spending enormous mental energy trying to decode their behavior, predict their moods, become whatever version of yourself keeps them warm. You are pressing the lever over and over because sometimes it works, and that sometimes is enough to keep you locked in. The third pattern is the one that happens after the relationship ends. This is the one nobody warns you about. You leave, you know it was the right decision, and then a song comes on, or you pass somewhere you used to go together, or you get a single message, and it all comes crashing back with a physical force that feels insane. That is not weakness, that is neurological relapse. Helen Fisher's research documented this directly. External cues associated with the person can trigger cravings, obsessive thinking, and compulsive behavior long after the relationship ends, identical how recovering addicts respond to drug-associated triggers. Breaking a trauma bond is not primarily a thinking exercise. The bond was installed through neurological conditioning, and undoing it requires the same thing that breaks any addiction: time, distance, and the deliberate absence of the thing you're addicted to. Every time you check their social media, every time you read old messages, every time you respond to a text, you are not getting closure. You are reactivating the addiction loop. You are pressing the lever again. Here is the thing that matters most. You were never weak. You were never foolish. You were never broken for staying or for struggling to leave someone who hurt you. You were human, with a human brain doing exactly what human brains were designed to do: bond, attach, and fight for survival. A set of neurological systems that evolved over millions of years to keep you connected to other people got turned against you by an environment of chaos and unpredictability. The research from Dutton and Painter, from Helen Fisher, from decades of behavioral science, all points to the same conclusion. The power of a trauma bond has almost nothing to do with love and almost everything to do with conditioning. But here is the reframe that changes everything. The same neuroplasticity that allowed your brain to be conditioned into this loop means it can be conditioned out of it. Every day without contact is a day the addiction signal weakens. Every consistent, safe, predictable relationship you build, even a friendship, even a therapist, even a community, begins to rewire what your nervous system understands as connection. Your brain learned that chaos feels like love. It can unlearn it. The slot machine can lose its power, but only if you stop pulling the lever.